Following a day touting the strength of Canada's lumber industry, Prime Minister Mark Carney will be hosting key meetings with his cabinet and provincial leaders today. Let's bring in our Glen McGregor joining us now from Ottawa. Glen, more talks now underway. What are we expecting from these discussions?
Faiza, I'm old enough to remember when prime ministers didn't like to meet with the provincial and territorial premiers, the first ministers, and they would avoid it at all costs and generally would do it once every year or two. Now it's pretty much a weekly occurrence, and will happen again this afternoon when Carney virtually meets with the premiers to give them an update on where things stand in this ongoing trade dispute. They haven't met since that deadline came and went on Friday. That Trump had arbitrarily imposed, saying that he would put the rate of tariff on Canadian products to 35% if the agreement wasn't struck. And there wasn't an agreement struck, so yes, that is now the rate on products that are exported to the United States that aren't covered by the USMCA CUSMA free trade agreement with the United States and Mexico. And yesterday we heard from Carney talking about some of the supports he's going to give. He's already made an announcement, a big announcement on the steel sector about 2 weeks ago when he was down in Hamilton at a steel mill there to announce some funding supports, retraining money, as well as efforts to keep foreign steel exporters out of the Canadian market, or at least limit their access. Yesterday, though, it was Softwood Lumber's turn because this is another industry that Trump is really gunning for. That industry looks like it's paying about something around 20% in tariffs for anti-dumping tariffs, even though Canada does not believe we're dumping lumber into the United States. Carney said that, repeated that again yesterday. And then another 15% in countervailing tariffs that the Americans apply. This is kind of outside of the USMCA agreement. It's kind of a separate issue. But Carney did talk about the things they were going to do to try and help bolster the Canadian lumber industry. Listen to what he had to say when he was in British Columbia yesterday.
I'm announcing a series of new measures to help the softwood lumber industry pivot to a growing Canadian market and to the markets of reliable trading partners around the world. We will be our own best customer by relying more on Canadian lumber, Canadian softwood for Canadian projects.
There really seems to be kind of a shift in focus in the communications from the Prime Minister and his cabinet ministers, looking more now about doing things like this to help the industry deal with the tariffs, as well as promoting these big projects, the nation-building projects that Carney says he's going to have an office up in the federal government by Labor Day, so only a couple of weeks away now from getting that running, and then conceivably start approving those projects shortly after that. We're hearing less and less from the Carney government about the state of those negotiations. And of course, when he meets with cabinet, there's really, the people who are handling that negotiation, it's a small number of ministers. Dominic LeBlanc, Minister for Canada-U.S. Relations. Obviously, he's been shuttling back and forth to Washington, meeting with counterparts there, trying to get a deal. Also, François-Philippe Champagne, the finance minister, and industry minister, Anita Anand. They're actually in Mexico, or were yesterday anyway, they might be on their way back now, meeting with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum about sort of the shared interests Canada and Mexico both have, and the fact that we were, all three countries were party to this agreement that Trump kind of pulled the rug out from underneath us both. So they're talking about possibly increasing the amount of trade that goes back and forth between Canada and Mexico, I guess within the ambit of the free trade agreement, and also talking about strategies for dealing with Donald Trump. Mexico's got a little bit better results than we have because Trump, when Sheinbaum and Trump spoke on Thursday last week, the president agreed to give Mexico a 90-day reprieve from an increased rate of tariff, which would raise their tariffs up to 30%, so still lower than the Canadian level. This is all stuff that the Prime Minister will be talking about with the premiers. I think we're going to see some real progress today, though, Faiza, on that list of those nation-building projects. He really wants to get going on those quickly. He says the federal government is going to be up to speed to start approving those within 2 years, starting in September when that office is set up to handle those requests. But the big question will be, and maybe we'll get some clarity on this today, do we get any more information from Mark Carney or from the premiers about which projects he is likely to approve? Will they be pipelines? Will they be new railway lines? Will they be electricity interties? All this still to be decided. Maybe we'll hear today.
Maybe. All right, Glen McGregor in Ottawa, thank you.